The movie begins with a sweet, caring family of Sandra having a lively chat with an author. She's eager to create an interest in her new book, and her kid is washing his dog. The interview goes well until Sandra's husband starts playing his instruments too loudly. They try to cope with it, but Sandra knows that it's her husband's sign to skip the interview, so they have to do it another time. So, Sandra, let her leave with a smile. The young boy takes his dog for a stroll, but his comeback breaks them into pieces. He sees his father's lifeless body in the snow covered in blood. Sandra calls the police, and the wound seems unrelated to what is obvious. He got the wound not from the fall, but from a sharp thing, which was strange. His body is also marked from different places. Sandra is crying in pain, but they have no hope left. He's dead for almost an hour while Daniel is out with his dog. Daniel is in great shock, and Sandra is exhausted of giving the answers to the investigation team. She has told each and everything that happened that morning, but they are trying to figure out the real reason because the chances are worth thinking. They even ask her to repeat the situation and recall everything. Daniel has also been put on test. Instead, he's blind and knows nothing. She's consistent with her questions, but the blood splashes on the wall. Don't clarify it. Another investigation officer recreates the situation with real-life examples and tries to solve the problem. They take them to a customized studio where they put the same music on and ask Sandra to listen to her husband's fall. They repeat the exact same questions of the interview and recreate the whole thing. But reaching the conclusion is not that easy. Moreover, Daniel is not eating at all. He has stopped talking to anyone. So Sandra calls his grandmother for a chat, but things don't improve. Therefore, the investigation officer subtly accuses Sandra of killing her husband, but she is not that skilled, because he has observed that the injuries are different, and no head was hit against the attic or anything like that. She brought him to the office where he checked all possible reasons of the death and his family's worries. He also spots a mark on Sandra's arm, but she claims to have it while working in the kitchen. Also, the police don't feel good about the type of his injuries. The investigator takes the case to court for more investigations, and they show them with their personal opinions. The lawyers think that Sandra and her husband don't have a positive connection with each other. Sandra said that her husband had the habit of playing instruments loudly every time. He was irritated by the situation. He wanted her to end the interview because he didn't like the student to ask questions about her. So he played the music loud, and Sandra got the hint of it and ended the interview. Sandra says that she wears earplugs and goes to sleep when her husband is working on the top floor with loud music. She's unbelievable because they don't think her words match her actions. She can work in hard conditions even when she's not mentally well. The court mocks her for sleeping in loud music instead of checking on her husband even for once. However, she believes that her husband never liked to be disturbed while working. She also says that her husband tried to kill himself 6 times before. Everyone thinks of it as the usual murder story, but the real facts will shock you. Daniel has also been put in a position where he has to tell the whole thing, but his words don't agree with the previous explanations. Daniel thinks the changing of words may be because of the trauma reaction. The facts are still vague, but they have to continue investigating. So, the spatter analysis expert decides that the 3 drops of blood were because of a hard hit on his head, on the top floor. The distance and shape of the blood drops look like they fell here from the big distance. Also, they guess that the husband falls from a purposeful push. The fall from such a height makes sense of the wound on the head, and the blood drops' thickness shows the hit. However, the investigation officer is still doubtful about the real facts because he doesn't trust his theories. No weapon was found, and the little boy was out of the house and Sandra was sleeping. Other spatter analysts thought that the husband fell from the top floor and hit a small part's roof, the edge of it, making the wound. Also, the spatters are because of hitting the floor with huge pressure. The blood bounces from the body, and 3 spatters are marked on the wall. So, it is the most likely idea that explains the situation, but there are still some holes in it. Biologists think that if the head hits the small room, then why hasn't his DNA been found on the roof? The analysts think that the snow melts after every hour, so the lodge with the blood may be melted after an hour. Therefore, the DNA samples wash off with the snow. Daniel is suggested to skip the investigation sessions because of the harsh investigative methods they'd be using. They think that the questions and facts will bother him for his whole life, and he'll be unable to deal with them, although he wanted to listen. The lawyer and his mother advise staying away from it, but he refuses. The next hearing is about his recent suicide tries. Sandra says that he was on several drugs, and he stopped taking them a while ago, but the bad effects made him try to kill himself with aspirin. He was lying still in his own bedroom. Sandra says that their relationship was normal, but they used to sleep in different rooms. She had the habit of waking him up sometimes, so she found him still. Although his psychologist doesn't say any depression, he was taking drugs for emotional balance, but he also shows that Sandra blames him for their son's accident. Daniel got blind in the accident, and she made her husband answerable for it. She used to blame him for everything, which put him in emotional trouble. Sandra admits to having fights after their son's fights, but she thinks them to be normal relationship problems. Sandra has become a friend of one of the investigation officers, and she tries to clean up her side. She makes him agree that she is not guilty, but he's following the job rules. At the same time, he doesn't want to hurt her by breaking facts. Sandra tells Daniel about her innocence as well, because she doesn't want her kid to think of her as a killer. The next hearing is to show a usual recent talk between Sandra and her husband. They had been arguing about Daniel's homeschooling. Sandra wasn't involved in Daniel's home chores. Her Her husband has to do it all alone. He was arguing about the change, but Sandra kept on blaming and lying to him. He wanted to have her time, but she was always busy. So the argument leads to a violent fight, and the husband hits the walls. She lied to the lawyer about the fight and the mark. The recordings show their ruined married life, how Sandra keeps on hurting her husband, and how he keeps on doing violent things. She never wanted to bother her writing career, and needed time for it. Her husband forced her to join in house chores. She wasn't willing to give up on her writing. However, she yells to make him understand that he's a loser. Now he can't write because he doesn't try. He's answerable for his own failures, as per Sandra. They found a mark on her arm, which was because of her husband's hard hold. She hides it because she doesn't want to be a suspect. They don't trust her now, but her friend investigator tries to show her point that her husband was ill and violent. He was on drugs and often showed anger. They also get the pictures of holes he made on the walls and the x-ray of his broken fingers. However, she is the most likely to be the first suspect in the case. Daniel also knows about her mother's cheating on his father, and all about the fights. She's been asked about her cheating and how he reacts to it. She says to have an open relationship with him, and he is okay with it, but the recording says the different, so nothing's clear because the recordings can be made. She knew that her husband had been recording her for a few months and she was okay, but now she thinks that she caused the fight on purpose because the recording was on. The judge stopped the case for the weekend and asked them to put Daniel on trial. He has to stay in the house, not seeing anyone or talking to anyone. Sandra is made to keep quiet throughout the weekend for the safety of the child. The court appointed a woman to live with him. Daniel chooses to be alone the whole weekend and doesn't want his mother near. Sandra is stunned to see his son suspecting her for his father's death. However, he doesn't know about her mother's cheating in the VI. He's very upset and cries loudly while talking about her mother with the guardian lady. She tries to comfort him, but he breaks into tears. Daniel does a test on the dog by giving him a lot of aspirin. He finds the dog unconscious. The next morning he panics, but the lady helps him to cure the dog with salt water. Luckily, he is back alive and has thrown up the aspirin. Daniel notices that the dog is acting weird. He's more quiet and lazy than before. He does that to prove that his father was suicidal because once the dog ate his father's vomit, although he was not fully aware of the outcomes, he was glad to get his dog back. He believes that the excess of aspirin was his father's way out from the stress. He used to be quiet and lazy after the aspirins, and the dog was behaving the same way even before. The day he got ill, Daniel and his father took the dog to the vet. However, on their way back home, his father expresses some sad thoughts. He wanted to make Daniel strong if ever the dog left the world. So he tells the truth that aspirin can kill or anything can kill, but Daniel has to face the reality. He has to be normal. If anyone goes, suddenly Daniel now understands that he was talking about himself rather than the dog that day. He has agreed to the fact that his father killed himself, and Sandra had no role in this. So he protects his mother from the accusations by telling the recent talk with his father. Therefore, the mother has been released, and they are back home with all the honor and respect. No matter how bad their relationship was, Sandra never tried to hurt him. She may act like a beast by making charges against him, thinking him accountable for everything. She may be the cruel one who harmed and tormented her emotionally, but she never did anything to hurt him except the slap. However, she's sorry that her son knows it all now. Her life has been exposed and her private talks are out. She's happy to get back home while Daniel is also waiting for him. The movie finishes with a warm embrace and gratitude, and a good sleep after so many days of an emotional ride. Therefore, the writer leaves the ending open to the personal view of the audience. The viewers have to decide whether Sandra is guilty or not. Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications to catch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.